The 1960s were a golden era for the American automotive industry. Roaring muscle cars, wild tail fins, and revolutionary technology seemed to define the decade. But behind the glory and chrome, not every car was a masterpiece. Some were so oddly styled, so underwhelming in performance, or so far out of touch with the market that they became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Some came from giants like Ford and Chevy. Others were bold experiments released at the worst possible time. Today, we're taking a ride through 12 of the most spectacular automotive disasters of the 1960s. Cars that made history not with their greatness, but with how epically they failed. Let's dive in. Number 12, 1960 Ford Edsel Ranger marketing's billion-dollar misfire. When Ford unveiled the Edsel brand, it promised the car of the future, pumping what would equal nearly $3 billion today into national ads, teaser campaigns, and even a prime-time TV spectacular. The Ranger was meant to slot neatly between Ford and Mercury, yet shoppers couldn't figure out where it belonged, or why it's now infamous. Horse collar. Grille resembled a chrome vacuum cleaner. Inside, push-button shifting and side dash pods sounded cutting-edge but proved quirky, unreliable, and pricey to repair. Worse, last-minute cost-cutting pushed assembly from dedicated lines to overworked Ford plants. Early buyers drove away with rattling trim, leaky seals, and mismatched paint. Hardly the promised luxury. Add a mild recession, rising interest rates, and a marketing message completely detached from what middle-class Americans wanted: dependable value. And the Ranger was doomed before anyone hit the test track. Production ended after just 3 model years, yet surviving Rangers now headline auctions as cautionary collectibles. Proof that hype without substance is merely noise on 4 wheels. Number 11, 1961 Plymouth Fury Detroit's futuristic fiasco. Picture walking into a showroom expecting a sleek, jet-age cruiser and instead meeting a car that looked like it crash-landed from a B-movie set. That was the reaction to the 1961 Plymouth Fury. Designers replaced the clean, flowing lines of earlier models with a boomerang-shaped grille, deeply recessed black eye, headlights, and an inward folding tail critics nicknamed the dented dart. Beneath the sheet metal lurked real muscle, the Commando 361 V8 and bulletproof Torque-A-Flight automatic. But buyers never got past the face. Dealers complained they couldn't decide whether to pitch it as sporty, luxury, or spaceship chic, and sales dropped almost 40% in a single year. And if the grille didn't chase shoppers off, its sticker, hundreds above a comparable Chevy Impala, finished the job. Even Chrysler brass admitted the car looked like it was styled by 3 committees that never met. Today, surviving Furies draw crowds not for elegance, but for pure shock value, a reminder that great performance can't outrun polarizing design. Number 10, 1962 Dodge Dart, the downsizing debacle. When rumor reached Chrysler HQ that Chevrolet might shrink its full-size cars, executives slammed the panic button, and the Dodge Dart paid the price. Engineers were ordered to lop off inches overnight, squeezing a proud full-sizer onto what was basically a mid-size platform. The outcome? A car too bulky to battle Ford's compact Falcon, yet too cramped to spar with the Impala it once shadowed. Razor-sharp creases and bloated wheel arches tried to shout sporty, but mostly whispered, awkward. Loyal Dart families climbed inside and found elbows knocking, trunks shrinking, and identity missing. New shoppers couldn't figure out where this in-betweener belonged, especially when rivals were crystal clear on size and price. Sales nosedived almost 50%, leaving dealers with faded inventory and Chrysler with $1 million migraine. Today, the 62 Dart stands as a cautionary exhibit when corporate fear outruns market research. You can strand a once-beloved nameplate in a no-man's land nobody asked for. Number 9, 1963 Chevrolet Corvair Monza Spyder Turbo Trouble on 2 axles. Chevrolet's Corvair was already unconventional, but the Monza Spyder cranked the weirdness to 11, a rear-mounted, air-cooled flat, 6 topped by one of America's first factory turbos, good for a then shocking 150 horsepower. On paper it was Porsche flair at Chevy prices, on the road it was a white-knuckle carnival ride. The car's swing axle rear suspension let the inside wheel tuck under in corners. And with the heavy engine hanging off the back, sudden oversteer lurked behind every enthusiastic throttle blip. Blow a tire, lift off the gas, and the Spider could snap faster than drivers could react. Accidents piled up, consumer complaints mounted, and safety crusader Ralph Nader devoted an entire chapter of unsafe at any speed to the Corvair, sparking congressional hearings and the birth of modern vehicle safety standards. GM quietly corrected the suspension in 1965, but the damage was done, sales crashed, and the Corvair line disappeared by '69, leaving behind a legend equal parts innovation and infamy. Number 8, 1964 Amphicar 77i, when a boat tried to be a car, Sivan sank. Imagine rolling off the boat ramp, dropping the top, and cruising straight into the lake. At least that was the dream sold with the Amphicar 770. Powered by a tiny 1.1-liter Triumph engine, the 770 stood for 7 knots on water, 70 miles on land. But that optimistic badge was the peak of its performance. Once afloat, the car relied on front wheels for steering, turning every wake into a 3-point turn and every breeze into a battle. Back on pavement, it wheezed to highway speeds and cornered like a canoe on casters. Worse, its thin steel body lacked proper corrosion protection. A handful of splashy weekends could spawn rust holes big enough to sink a fisherman's faith. Yet the real dagger was price. Buyers paid more than a well-equipped Mustang for half the horsepower and twice the headaches. Fewer than 4,000 Amphicars were built, but every survivor today is a floating punchline, proof that being mediocre at two things is no substitute for being great at one. Number 7, 1965 Chrysler Newport, sleek looks, structural risk. In the mid-60s, nothing screamed style quite like a pillarless hardtop, and the 1965 Chrysler Newport delivered that breezy, open look in a full-size 4-door package. With no central B-pillar between the front and rear doors, it created a wide, airy cabin that felt like a convertible with a roof. But behind the glamour came some troubling compromises. Without that structural support, the car's chassis flexed under stress, especially inside impact collisions, leaving rear seat passengers dangerously exposed. Over time, owners complained of sagging doors, creaky frames, and wind noise that turned highway drives into shouting matches. Even Chrysler mechanics admitted the design was difficult to keep aligned as the cars aged. Sure, it came with a plush interior and powerful V8 options, but many drivers found themselves trading looks for lasting quality and safety. The Newport's no-pillar silhouette may have been a showroom star, but on the street, it proved that cutting corners, literally, can lead to long-term regret. Number 6, 1966 Peel Trident, the space-age toy you could barely drive. If a Jetsons-style jelly bean and a go-kart had a baby, it would look something like the 1966 Peel Trident. Built on the Isle of Man and tipping the scales at just 200 pounds, the Trident was barely larger than a child's wagon, and not much more practical. It featured a clear bubble dome roof, no side doors, no reverse gear, and a 49cc engine that topped out around 28 mph on a good day with the wind at your back. With essentially zero suspension, every pothole became a full-body experience and safety. Forget it. There were no crumple zones, no seat belts, and a plastic shell offering about as much protection as a snow globe. Marketed as a futuristic urban commuter, the Trident was more conversation piece than car. While it dazzled crowds with its sci-fi looks, it was wildly impractical for real-world driving. Today, it's a museum oddity and collector's gem, a reminder that sometimes being ahead of your time just means no one's ready or willing to ride along. Number 5, 1967 Cadillac El Dorado, beauty meets breakdown. When the 1967 Cadillac El Dorado rolled onto the scene, it was nothing short of stunning. Sharp, edged styling, hidden headlights, and a long, low coupe profile made it look like a spaceship draped in chrome. Under the hood, a massive 429 cubic inch V8 promised effortless highway cruising, but the real headline was front-wheel drive, a Cadillac first since the 1930s. Technologically bold, yes, but also deeply problematic. The front, heavy layout caused serious understeer in tight corners, and the brakes, still drum-based, struggled to stop its 500-pound bulk with confidence. The complex FAWD drivetrain was packed tightly and notoriously hard to service. baffling mechanics used to simpler setups. Parts were scarce, labor was expensive, and repairs often meant major disassembly. For all its glamour, the El Dorado became a love-hate relationship, gorgeous to look at, frustrating to own. Today, collectors prize its iconic design, but under the surface lies a cautionary tale, proving that even luxury icons can bite back when innovation outruns practicality. Number 4, 1967 AMC Marlin. The misfit fastback that missed the mark. In a decade where style meant everything, the 1967 AMC Marlin tried to make a splash, but belly flopped instead. AMC aimed to ride the fastback craze sparked by the Mustang and Charger, but the Marlin's oversized body and awkward proportions left buyers confused. Built on the Rambler Classic midsize platform, it wore a sloping roofline that looked more like a whale than a shark, earning it nicknames that AMC likely never intended. It wasn't aggressive enough to be a muscle car, nor sleek or nimble enough to be a true sports coupe. Even when AMC added a beefier 343 V8 and upgraded the interior, it still felt like a car trying to play dress up in a segment it didn't belong in. Then came the final blow. AMC's own Javelin, launched the same year, was cheaper, lighter, and better looking. The Marlin was instantly outdated in its own showroom. Today, it stands as a reminder that chasing trends without a clear identity often leaves you stranded between two lanes, never quite arriving. Number 3, 1968 Renault 10A, the French import that got lost in translation. At a glance, the 1968 Renault 10 seemed like a smart, budget-friendly import, compact, fuel-efficient, and easy to park. But once it hit American highways, the cracks showed fast. With a tiny 1.1-liter rear-mounted engine pushing just 48 horsepower, the R10 struggled to keep up with traffic, especially in a country where 60 mph is just a warm-up. Its soft suspension made cornering feel like sailing a dinghy in a windstorm, and drum brakes gave drivers little confidence in a sudden stop. Add to that a clunky gearbox, minimal air conditioning, and styling that felt awkwardly European for the muscle car era, and you had a recipe for rejection. Americans wanted power, size, and presence. The Renault 10 offered none of that. Even loyal drivers found it lacking on long trips or in crosswinds. Though popular in Europe, the R10 simply didn't translate across the Atlantic. It's a classic example of cultural mismatch. A car that might have been just right elsewhere, but in the US was simply out of its league. Number 2, 1969 Chevrolet Kingswood Estate Wagon. The gas guzzling giant that time forgot. At nearly 19 feet long and tipping the scales at over 800 pounds, the 1969 Chevrolet Kingswood Estate Wagon wasn't just a car. It was a land yacht. Built on the Impala platform and powered by a thirsty 427 cubic inch V8, it was designed to haul the whole family, the dog, the luggage, and probably the neighbor's groceries too. With room for up to 9 passengers and wood grain panels screaming suburban luxury, it was peak American excess on wheels. But the timing couldn't have been worse. As the 70s loomed, gas prices began creeping up and consumers started shifting towards smaller, more efficient rides. The Kingswood's abysmal fuel economy, often dipping below 10 miles per gallon, made it a tough sell, and maneuvering such a beast through city streets felt more like docking a barge than driving a car. Today, the Kingswood stands as a symbol of pre-crisis indulgence, oversized, overpowered, and completely out of sync with the changing times. Number 1, 1969 Subaru 360. That the pint-size risk that almost sank Subaru. When Subaru sailed across the Pacific, it bet big on the 360, a cute 1,000-pound key car that ruled Japan's narrow streets. But America wasn't Tokyo. Beneath its tiny rear lid, a 356cc two-stroke twin wheezed out just 25 horsepower, needing over 30 seconds to limp to 50 Fiat. On interstate on-ramps, truckers passed it like a traffic cone. Thin body panels and riveted seams offered almost no crash protection, and the drum brakes faded after only a few panic stops. Consumer Reports blasted the 360 as unacceptably hazardous. Headlines echoed nationwide, and the fledgling brand nearly vanished overnight. Dealers couldn't give them away, some slashed prices below $4,300, cheaper than a used Chevy. Yet this miniature misstep forced Subaru to rethink power, durability, and safety, paving the road for the rugged all-wheel drive legends that followed. Today, surviving 360s are quirky cult collectibles, rolling reminders that first impressions can be brutal, but smart comebacks can rewrite a company's destiny. And there you have it. 12 cars from the 1960s that promised a lot but delivered. Well, something else entirely. Some were bold, some bizarre, and a few were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But love them or hate them, they each left a mark on automotive history. Have you ever seen or ridden in one of these cars? Or is there a car disaster we missed? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next classic car adventure.